Former Attorney General John Mitchell's Watergate conviction sentence was one of 46 cases being reviewed by the two-member Federal Prison Board of Examiners. The Southeastern Region examiners will forward their recommendations for or against parole to the Federal Parole Board. The examiners hold such closed hearings 6 times a year at Maxwell Air Force Base. They will be conducting parole reviews through next Monday. Mitchell's case was among the first to be considered. Wayne Allgood, administrator for hearing examiners, said Mitchell's case was handled routinely. Who recommended parole for Mr. Mitchell?
Well, we cannot comment at this time what our recommendations are, except to say that the case is referred to our regional office for consideration by the regional commissioner for original jurisdiction consideration, which would mean that the case will, if he goes along with our decision, it will be referred to the national commissioners in Washington for their evaluation.
Was this pretty much a routinely conducted hearing?
Yes, sir. Just like any other hearing.
What criteria do you use in making recommendations to the board?
Well, the Parole Commission has adopted a set of guidelines which we consider the offense behavior, that is the seriousness of the offense itself. We consider what we call salient factor scores, where we consider a number of points based on the individual's background, and make the application and come up with a recommended guideline range.
How much consideration was given to the health and age, Mr. Mitchell?
Well, of course, this always is a factor that we do consider, especially the health of an individual. And as you know, Mr. Mitchell has had some health problems.
You can't comment further on that.
That's about all I can tell you at this time, sir.
Mitchell's attorney, William Hanley, pleaded his client's case before the Board of Examiners. He said the former Attorney General was in good spirits. He found the examiners well prepared, and he hoped he would hear the results of the hearing soon.
Oh, Mr. Mitchell was a very cooperative inmate the entire time that I've been associated with him here at the camp.
How is he faring after his surgery?
Seems to be doing very well. He's still on crutches, but I understand that he's making good progress.
Mitchell was to have spent 1 to 4 years in the federal prison for his part in the Watergate cover-up. He was eligible for parole after serving 1 year. He arrived at Maxwell Air Force Base June the 22nd of last year, spent 6 months doing clerical work while an inmate, and then was furloughed to undergo hip surgery. He was back in the prison 5 months later. He returned May 26th, this time on crutches and still not commenting to reporters. The 64-year-old Watergate conspirator has indicated that silence will be broken upon his release from prison. The exact date of that release is still not known. It may be as long as 2 months. Reporting from the federal prison camp at Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
The future of Amtrak's Floridian has caused a mild uproar in South Alabama as federal officials canceled the train altogether 1 month, reinstate it the next month, then threaten to cancel it again the next month. Amtrak officials admit there is too much confusion surrounding the Chicago to Miami train, but they also say the blame is not all theirs. The Department of Transportation has contributed a little by changing its plans from time to time, and one of the biggest problems, according to one Amtrak official, is that the Congress is becoming more and more reluctant to appropriate money for the ailing rail system. Legislators claim they can't, with a clear conscience for the taxpayers, continue to fund the railway while it loses millions of dollars each year. But that leads to the paradox of how can an agency operate in the black without sufficient funding? The question could be answered once and for all next year, when the Congress accepts or rejects a forthcoming plan to be submitted by the Department of Transportation. That report will be the end product of the 51 hearings currently being held by the Interstate Commerce Commission. A rough timetable of events leading up to the final congressional decision goes like this. The ICC will complete its series of hearings July 24th. The testimony from the hearings will be gathered, processed into a category of general findings, then analyzed by ICC officials. A final commission report must be submitted to the Department of Transportation by September 30th of this year. At that time, work will begin towards devising a final, revised plan by the DOT. The Congress has ordered completion and delivery of this report by the end of this year. But that's when the real fireworks will begin, as the House and Senate attempt to iron out a unified, concise, and hopefully profitable course for all of Amtrak's routes, including the Floridian. But congressional observers say such a course will be difficult, if not impossible. Already this year, the House and Senate passed Amtrak appropriations legislation that was so different it may take months to reach a compromise. For example, the House version carried a clause that placed a freeze on all route changes or cancellations until October 1st, 1979. The Senate version disagreed. All the confusion surrounding the Amtrak ordeal has taken its toll. One Amtrak official says business has been hurt noticeably in the past months, particularly since Transportation Secretary Brock Adams announced that he favors a massive cutback in Amtrak services. The official says many passengers took the announcement to mean that services had already been cut. But he adds ultimately the decision on service changes or cancellation lies in the Congress. As the current ICC hearings continue around the country, officials report the number of participants has been varied. Here in Montgomery, a large auditorium was far from crowded, and most of these people were simply observers. Only a scant few actually participated. But in a small town in South Dakota, the scene was quite different. The meeting place had to be relocated as more than 500 persons showed up, all having something to say. Running concurrently with the ICC hearings on Amtrak are about 20 hearings on the Southern Crescent, which its owners, the Southern Railway Corporation, says is losing about $6 million per year. As a result, Southern says it wants to get rid of the Crescent, which used to run through Montgomery but has now been rerouted through Birmingham. In the Department of Transportation's preliminary plan presented to Congress, the purchase of the Crescent by Amtrak was cited as a possibility. Southern Railway offered a package deal to Amtrak, but it turned it down. If the hearings this summer clear the way for the sale of the Crescent, Amtrak officials say a serious effort will be made to negotiate for its purchase. And that would open up yet another possibility for added rail service to the Montgomery area. One of the most recent developments in the Amtrak predicament came earlier this week, when it was reported the Amtrak Board of Directors had already made a final decision on the Floridian, voting to reroute it away from South Alabama. It was later learned, however, that the board had simply voted to reopen a study of rerouting alternatives for the train, which takes us back to last fall when such a study was first implemented.
So it appears the fate of rail service for South Alabama lies snarled in the red tape of federal bureaucracy. Therefore, our earlier question of where do we go from here should actually be rephrased, how do we go from here? I'm Dave Rickey, reporting for Composite.
The crop wasn't large by national standards, but it was the biggest Lowndes County officials had seen. In several scattered patches near this house outside Fort Deposit were over 1,000 of the illegal plants. Undercover agents arrived at the small farmhouse this morning and eventually arrested 2 men who were tending to one of the patches.
We had some farmers who had gave us some information in regards to these plants being planted out here.
Did you have to observe them for a while before you made an arrest?
Yes, we did observe them, possibly 2 weeks or better, before we made an arrest.
How large of an operation is this?
They have something around 1,000 plants, maybe a little more. We are not sure. We have not found all of them as of yet. We're still searching.
Is this a typical operation in rural areas of Alabama? Do law enforcement officers such as you run into this a lot?
Well, in our county, we have not run into a large amount, but it's normal found in other counties, and we've found them also in our county in the past year. Most of the surrounding counties, people do grow such plants as these. Last year, I believe, Butler County had several fields found in their county, and we found one not too far from here last year. We destroyed it. We did not make any arrests.
Would you say that rural marijuana growing is a good business in these parts of Alabama?
Truthfully, it is. It's a complete profit. People who takes them and possibly sell them locally, and they don't have to go through the second and third man. They can do it themselves with nickel and dime bags. Pretty good profit comes off of them.
The alleged marijuana farmers were identified as Robert Bullock and Don Renwood Powell. Both have been charged with felony possession of the weed. Police found a small quantity of the substance in the house, which was decorated with marijuana print curtains. Its resident, Phyllis Glenn Carver, was also taken into custody. According to officials, she claims to know nothing about the operation. State ABC agents continued to pull up the plants through the afternoon and intend to search the kudzu-covered area thoroughly for additional yields of the easily grown but illegal bumper crop. Bill Weaver, WSFA TV News, Lowndes County.
I will ask the council to approve approximately $250,000 towards the finishing of the restoration of the train shed. And I would ask then for about approximately $500,000 to bring the station itself back up to minimum standards of fire code with the electrical and with the plumbing and with making the stairs safe and the roof not leaking and all of those things that are necessary to get it in position for someone to really see the beauty of it.
Art Foster had the station for quite a while and never found a tenant. Have you had any bites?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have had several. One of the ones in particular I think that is most interested right now and would, I think, be in position to do the best job with it is the General Services Administration, which handles the leasing for federal agencies such as the Army recruiting, the Navy, or any of the many other agencies. They are very interested in taking the station from the city, and if they did, then they would refurbish it and make office spaces out of it, make restaurants, and have some space for some shops. This ties in with a national commitment of historical preservation.
The doors to the Elmore County Voter Registration Office will now be open full-time. This complies with the new state law that allows many counties to expand to full-time registration. The chairman of the Elmore County Board of Registrars, Mrs. Ethel Brantley, is optimistic about its effects.
I think this is going to be good for the county. It's something that we have needed for a long time. We give the people the opportunity to come in every day, where we had only been meeting the first and third Mondays of each month. So this is going to be a great help to the county.
Do you expect a larger turnout this year?
I think so, because Elmore County had a re-identification period last year, and we have quite a few people that did not re-identify. So we need to get these people in, plus the new ones that need to come in to register. So between now and then, the September elections, I think that we'll have a great number.
Do you see any problem in maybe a late rush for registering?
Well, we always have that, but right before any of the election, we always have a great, just big turnout before the election. So yes, between now and September, we'll be real busy.
The Board of Registrars will be open Monday through Friday from 9 to 4, and Elmore County citizens have until August 25th to register for the September 5th primary. This is Dave Schmidt, WSFA TV News in Wetumpka.
On TV right out. Pretty good strike. Y'all covered the whole shot.
I made eagle on 12, and I was one over. I'd bogeyed 10, part 11, and then when eagle 12, it kind of gave me a little incentive. I got it from one over back to one under, and things just seemed to happen after that.
Driver and a 7-iron to the green?
Yeah, I just happened to catch a good high hook, and it seemed the wind seemed to catch it, and it was pretty good. You know, T-ball was out there pretty good ways.
Well, it certainly was an easy 5, wasn't it? 15-footer for a 5.
How do you stand for the day?
Right now, I guess I'm 3 over par.
Okay, well,
We're climbing rapid.
that's very difficult. It's on to the right of the... Well, don't make me laugh.
I just feel like I'm probably the world's worst ahead player. I just can't seem to play. I've done this several times. I'd rather be 1, 2 shots ahead. When you start getting 7, I'm playing. I bogeyed the last 3, and in the back of my mind, I'm making bogeys.
But that's right. You were planning to make bogey. Nobody really came at you today, so you just took them as they came. Huh?
Well, Richard Anthony, if he had made a little putt, he missed on 17. Could have been a little bit.
Well, he could have cut it to 2. Yeah.
Could have cut it to 2, but he's a great player, and he's trying to catch me, and I'm just trying to stay, just not do anything stupid.
Pretty good a shot there, though, to 17 with the ball down in the rough, and you had to get it over that trap.
Well, I pulled it about 25 feet. For reason it looked like it went at the pin. I was playing that one to the right and just happened to get away with it.
You're going to play in the Colonial Acres, and is that the last?
I'll play out at Colonial Acres.
Play any more?
I may try to play in the State Open.
You ought to.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you a lot, Phil. Appreciate it.
Crowd yelling for Jimmy. Is he down to his last swing? Championship point?
This is a historic point, actually, to win 3 times in a row.
Not since 1936. It is long! Bjorn Borg does have some emotion. And he has caught up with the ages. The crown is his. Bjorn, the bear in Swedish, named for an ancient Swedish king. A young killer. Was that Bjorn? And this one is too, on a tennis court. Leonard Bergling has permitted himself a smile. The coach, Mariana Simeonescu, the fiancé.
That is putting us in an impossible position. There is absolutely no way, in my opinion, that we can pass the bills that the governor has said he's going to include in his call in a 5-day period. These bills, 4 of them, are the 4 most controversial bills that has been before that legislature in the past 4 years. Each time they came up, the House passed them, but they were killed by filibuster in the Senate. Now, there are some of them that you're even going to find filibustering in the House on this time. So, yes, it's just put our backs to the wall to the degree that there's no way we can do it.
What do you think are the issues that will be debated most in the House, or filibustered?
Well, I can assure you one, and that is the TVA bill. The TVA bill would take $20 million the first year out of the general fund, and it would take up to $35 million by 1984. And, of course, to replace that money, we would have to put a tax on the people here in Central and South Alabama. And I'll filibuster that one if I have to, if it comes in exactly as it did before.
There was one surprise today during the last day of qualifying on the state and local level for the September 5th primary. Lloyd Smith, clerk of the probate judge's office, qualified for the Montgomery County tax assessor. He will oppose the incumbent Republican candidate Marvin Driver. In other positions, 7 people qualified for the county executive committee, 2 people for the state executive committee, and 1 person for the Board of Education. According to Denise Potter, Secretary-Treasurer of the Montgomery County Democratic Committee, 3 of the 5 candidates for the State Executive Committee and 11 of the 31 candidates for the County Committee are AEA members. She added that they are qualifying these people unless instructed by State Party Chairman George Bells or unless they receive a different opinion from the Attorney General.
Has the flow been pretty heavy today? Not as heavy as we expected. We had expected quite a busy day and really a busy time right around 5 p.m. We have had, I'd guess, 15, 16 people come in today.
From the Montgomery County Courthouse, Janet May, WSFA TV News.
That's been my problem all along, as I'm not Jarvis.
We understand that the mayor has the power to do that. Our union representatives have told us the consequences, but we feel like if we go back to work now, we've wasted our efforts and everything we've tried to do.
Aren't these extreme measures, though?
Well, we feel that we've tried every other avenue. We've tried going through our chief, through our councilman to obtain pay raises, benefits, and to no avail.
Our discussions going on now. It's beginning to have an adverse effect upon the city because the people realize that we do not have the adequate police protection that we likely should have. Also, the population of the city is becoming quite disturbed. The response I'm getting is that, look, you know, you need to boot them on the way and get this thing over with and go.
No, they did not influence my decision. You know, knowing members of your family, they always want you to do a lot of things, and they aspire for you to do great things. But I was not influenced at all by my mother or my uncle, as much as, you know, by my consultation with my sons. And then there was an outside influence that a kind of an event that transpired on the political scene.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, I really would rather not, but you know, maybe at some later date. But it made me feel rather compelled to qualify myself and become a candidate.
How much support do you think you can get? Now, there are 16 other candidates in this race. We know that it will cost upwards to $1 million to run for governor in this state because of the cost of advertising, television, and newspapers. Can you get that kind of money?
No, I mean, that's a shame, I think. And it's always concerned me because I'm aware of that as much as anyone, having been around big political campaigns. It's a shame that the people of any state and of the United States cannot vote for good, decent people. And it's the thing that keeps most good people out of politics because it's difficult to raise that kind of money. I'll run the kind of campaign that I have the money to run. And that will depend on the contributions that I get, and particularly in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But I think as my campaign picks up, I think that I will have more and more contributions. I do have sources that I can tap for money. I have commitments for money. But to compete with the kind of campaigns that we see going on with the other gubernatorial candidates, I will need considerable amount of contributions.
All right, let me ask you this one quick question.
I'm counting on the voters. I'm counting on the people out there to let their vote do this election for them, to let this vote give them the governor they want.
But you're still going to have $1 million.
Well, maybe not so. You know, it depends on the people, and if they become aware, and I think they are aware. I think they're looking for a candidate, a place to put their vote. And if it's important to them that good government not be expensive government, that they not have to pay through the nose, and if they don't want people obligated for money, then I think that they would be receptive to getting out the vote for someone.
One final question. Have you talked with your former husband since you announced and filed?
No.
What do you think his reaction to this is?
Well, I don't know. I expect, as he has always traditionally done, that he will not become involved in any of the campaigns. I think he will, you know, stay out of the campaigns. But I certainly welcome his support, and I certainly welcome the support of all of his followers, and I welcome any of his workers to come. I could use some of those good Wallace workers that I've seen around for a long time.
Well, Texas is about as big as 4 or 5 of the southeastern states, and of course there's 7 or 8 major schools that are in Texas and recruit there, plus 9 or 10 other major schools that recruit Texas. I think whereas in the southeast maybe you'd be competing against 4 or 5 schools for one player, whereas there you might be competing with 15 or 16 schools for a particular player if he's very outstanding.
You have one of the outstanding quarterback recruits, reputed to be one of the outstanding ones, Cade. Have you been in contact with him? What's the situation this summer?
Well, we've seen him some. He certainly has a lot of ability. It's very difficult to play quarterback as a freshman. I think if anybody could do it and do an adequate job, he could. He has great talent, but we'll have to see how he does when he gets there.
This is the Pentecostal Church in Jefferson Park, a mountain community near Birmingham, Alabama. These God-fearing people celebrate like this every Sunday. But this meeting is a little different. They have a special guest, Reverend F.C. Coster, an automobile mechanic from Fayette, Alabama, and a candidate for governor. He's registered as a Democrat, and he's running for the Lord.
I'm not in this thing to compromise with anybody running for governor or anything else. I don't intend to compromise the gospel if it never gets nobody's vote but me and my wife. I don't intend to compromise the gospel of Jesus Christ, because my soul is too precious and your soul's too precious to compromise with the world and tell people you can live anyway and go to heaven. You can't do it. If you go to God's heaven, you'll have to live like the book said. And if you elect me for governor of Alabama, I'm still going to stay with the word. Might as well get used to that. If you want to preach in Montgomery for governor, you just go and vote for Brother Coster, and you'll have one to stay at the word for 4 years in Montgomery. Amen.
To spread the word, Reverend Coster will be traveling throughout the state in this truck, which he painted himself. He doesn't have a whole lot of money, so you're not going to see a fancy advertising campaign. You'll find Reverend Coster running for governor in the small churches of Alabama, like here in Jefferson Park. Jack Kendrick for WSFA TV News.
I just feel like I'm probably the world's worst ahead player. I just can't seem to play. I've done this several times. I'd rather be 1-2 shots ahead. When you start getting 7, I'm playing. I bogeyed the last 3, and in the back of my mind, I'm making bogeys.
But that's right. You were planning to make bogey. Nobody really came at you today, so you just took them as they came. Huh?
Well, Richard Anthony, if he had made a little putt, he missed on 17. Could have been a little bit.
Well, he could have cut it to 2. Yeah.
Could have cut it to 2, but. He's a great player, and he's trying to catch me, and I'm just trying to stay, just not do anything stupid.
Pretty good a shot there, though, to 17 with the ball down in the rough, and you had to get it over that trap.
Well, I pulled it about 25 feet. The reason it looked like it went at the pin, I was playing that one to the right and just happened to get away with it.
You're going to play in the Colonial Acres, and is that the last?
I'll play out at Colonial Acres.
Play any more?
I may try to play in the State Open.
The peak demand on the system, the peak usage of electricity was on June the 28th, and it was some 9% higher than the highest usage last year. So the usage keeps increasing.
What are your expectations for August? Do you feel like we'll be able to meet the demands with the weather continuing to get hot?
Well, we used to say July and August were the peak months. That timing seems to be backing up. As I say, June the 28th this year. Last year it was on June the 22nd, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, about that time of day.
What about equipment breakdowns? If that happens, can you back that up in any way?
Well, you always have to qualify a statement that says you have enough capacity by saying that if everything runs smoothly, you have enough capacity. If we were to lose a big generator or a plant like the Farley plant, then we could get into trouble right quick.
Are we relying on coal or hydroelectric power this summer mainly?
We are mainly relying on coal, as we always do. We're anticipating that the nuclear plant will provide about 14% of the electricity for the state this year.
What about the steam plant?
The steam plant will be 70-some-odd%, and hydro will drop down somewhat to about 11. If our capacity to produce electricity was approached by the demand for the usage, that is a time that we would consider dropping load. Our reserve capacity is high this year with the addition of 2 new plants that we did not have last year. Now, this will probably carry us for a couple of years before the annual growth in the state or the annual usage in the state would necessitate us building another plant.
It's very hard to do unless you put it under a microscope, but usually you can find on the nuts after they fall off the tree, and this is one thing that really happens, that you'll find a white residue around on the shucks of the nut where he's penetrated, and this gives you a good indication that you may have this infestation. But one of the best ways to detect them is using the light traps to determine the infestation.
What months do the shuckworms begin to infest?
They start in late June and July and August, and it usually get worse in the latter part of July and August. It's when you have the worst infestation, and they go all the way until harvest.
What's the recommended treatment?
Well, you need to go on a regular spray schedule of using some Zoline or Zorax, and this is the recommended insecticides to use, and you have to go on the recommended spray schedule that's in our pecan pest management bulletin.
Does the shuckworm usually penetrate in the Montgomery area pretty heavily?
Well, we haven't noticed too much. You do have some damage from them, but in this orchard, as you noticed today, we've hardly found any damage so far from the shuckworm. We found no scab and anything else, but you do have them all over the pecan belt, and especially in some of the counties where they have the pest management program going on, Mobile and Baldwin, you would probably see more of them, but he's scattered throughout, and he's one of the most destructive pecan insects we have.
Like I was getting it from the, press and from the fans, like, the writers, they was writing up about, I was making all the money and I wasn't producing, and like the fans would come out and I was having trouble with them, like they was booing me like every day. Like you come on the field and you could hear your contract around the ballpark. No sooner you hit the field, like I was beginning to think, that my contract was my last name, like, 2.85, that's all I was hearing. So it put a lot of pressure on me, and, you try to, keep it out of your mind, but you go to the plate and be trying to concentrate, and you can hear some guy holler out, your contract, and it add pressure to you.
Playing every day helping?
Well, yes, in the beginning, that was another problem. Like we had 4 outfielders that needed to play. We had Hendricks, and they was deciding who they was going to trade, and they finally traded Hendricks, and then I got a chance to start playing every day, and I started hitting the ball,
You don't mind hitting that left-handed pitching?
Well, no, I've been hitting left-handers better than I have right-handers, and like in the beginning of the year, like I wasn't playing sometime against even right-hand pitchers. Like he would have this guy playing, and then I wouldn't be playing. I set out 2 or 3 games, and then Hendricks would set out 2 or 3 games, and either one of us was hitting good because both of us used to playing every day.
Four items will be included in the special session called July 31st. They include property tax legislation, an education budget, the redistribution of TVA money, and a school bond issue. The amount of that school bond issue has not yet been determined by the governor.
I will include in the special call of this session proposals to lower and keep ad valorem taxes from rising in Alabama as a result of the federal court order. Also, the school budget program, the TVA bill, so-called, and a school bond issue. In order to keep from having to call a special election for the matter involving, for instance, a property tax, which will include, that is, the lowering of the property tax or keeping it low, the legislature must complete its duties and adjourn by midnight August the 5th. Otherwise, there will be the necessity for a special election to be called, which will cost upwards and close to $1 million. The legislature in 2 previous sessions, the House having passed a bill that would lower property taxes or keep them low, only to be tied up in the Senate both times. If the Senate had not liked the legislation, they could have changed it somewhat, had a conference committee, and then this matter could have been concluded, and the people of Alabama would not be as anxious as they are today.
Governor Wallace said he will submit his own ad valorem tax plan to the legislature, drawn up by some of the best constitutional lawyers in the state. He said it will give local government a certain amount of its own clout. He said any plan approved by the legislature must win approval by Judge Johnson's court, that a tax plan in Alabama must be approved by the federal courts. Reporting from the state capitol, George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
I think Melba Till got mistreated. I think that, and I'm not saying she did exactly right, but I am saying that I know about what happened in that case. And those bankers came from all over this state, toting money to her, saying, I want you to, you know, anytime you want to borrow money, you let me loan it to you. She didn't steal one penny. Melba Till did. She wasn't costing the state anything. If she was going to be stealing something, she wouldn't have put her name on notes. And I tell you, I wasn't going to be a party to prosecuting that woman. I'm not saying what she did was proper and right, but I'm saying she certainly shouldn't be in the penitentiary. And there's a lot of folks done a lot worse. Now, if she'd have been taking money in kickbacks from bankers, then certainly I'd have prosecuted her and anybody else. If you recall correctly, I was a good friend with Kenneth Hammond, and when I found out he was trying to take a bribe from the telephone company, I prosecuted him. He was president of the Public Service Commission. I would have done the same to Melba Till, but she wasn't pocketing that money. She wasn't gypping the state out of any money. I think there was some political motivations behind it because she got involved in the governor's race in 1970, and I just wasn't, I don't have any apologies to make about it.
Yet two juries found her guilty of two separate charges.
Well, I'm saying the jury got a right to do that, but I also got a right to decide what cases I prosecute. And if I don't think somebody's guilty of it, now, if there had been an across-the-board effort to also prosecute those bankers, I wouldn't have minded getting all of them in there. But I'm telling you, there were a bunch of bankers in this state who were just as guilty of anything Melba Till might have been guilty of, and I don't think that woman belongs in the penitentiary.
I first learned of this, of the fact that money had come from this committee to re-elect President Nixon during the Watergate hearings, in 1973, I suppose. And the money came into Alabama. I didn't solicit the money, and it didn't come to me personally, but I'm satisfied that it came into this state and it was used in our campaign in 1970.